For over 70 years, Houston, Texas reigned as one of the premier pro wrestling cities in the United States, a model of longevity and consistency. It attracted generations of loyal and rabid fans to weekly Friday night matches, first at the City Auditorium, then the Sam Houston Coliseum for 7 decades, and provided a starting point or launching pad for some of the biggest box office attractions in the sport. From Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, to Gorgeous George, to Vern Gagne, to Argentina Rocca, to the Big Cat Ernie Ladd, and the Chief, Wahoo McDaniel. Its television show, Houston Wrestling, was rivaled for longevity only by the wrestling telecasts in Memphis, Tennessee, and Portland, Oregon, airing weekly for an uninterrupted and incredible 39 years. The Houston wrestling tradition stretched from 2 years before the United States entrance into World War I to 2 years before the fall of the Berlin Wall. This amazing run was accomplished under the auspices of just 2 promoters, Morris Siegel and Paul Bosch. Siegel served as promoter from 1915 to 1967, 52 years. But it was under Bosch that Houston Wrestling achieved its greatest success. Serving as television host for 20 years and promoter for 20 more, Paul Bosch became synonymous with pro wrestling for millions of Houstonians. A wrestler, war hero, and author, Bosch's reputation for honesty and integrity to both fans and wrestlers alike was rivaled only by the legendary Sam Muchnick of St. Louis. A handshake with Bosch was more binding than any contract ever written. Wrestlers repaid him with their loyalty and fans with their support, making Houston, Texas a mecca for wrestling action for almost half a century. Houston wrestling lasted 6 years longer than the time from the Wright brothers' first flight to mankind's first footsteps on the moon. It featured the best wrestlers in the world battling it out before the world's most loyal fans. And this is its story. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the award-winning series from Kayfabe Commentaries Back to the Territories. I'm Jim Cornette, and on this edition, as we always do, we're going to travel back in time to one of the classic wrestling territories and discover just exactly what made it so special. In this case, however, not a territory, but a single city, a very important city to wrestling history. And joining me to converse about this, a young man who is uniquely qualified to discuss Houston, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Houston's own Bruce Prichard. Hello, young fella.
Hello there.
You're the youngest guest I've had so far, I think.
I like that, you know, because every single locker room that I've visited lately, I'm the oldest fart there.
Yeah, but in this case, on this series, I think you're actually the youngest person that's done this, you know, because the average age of my normal guest is dead. But
it works.
Houston, Texas was a place that was near and dear to your heart, but you weren't born in Houston. You were born in Texas. But
I was born in El Paso, and then we moved to Houston when I was 5 years old, and that's when my world kind of opened up, and I was introduced to Houston wrestling. In El Paso, we had the Amarillo territory, and Eddie Guerrero, Chavo Guerrero, their dad, Gory Guerrero, was a promoter in El Paso. So when we moved to Houston, we were introduced to Paul Bosch, the Sam Houston Coliseum, and wrestling every Friday night.
But even when you were 5 years old, do you remember, like, because that was they used the El Paso office used the Funk's Amarillo territory as a booking office. They used a lot of their talent. Do you remember seeing Dory Funk Jr. in the day, or were you too young?
Yeah, without a doubt, the Funks were our heroes, man. Dory and Terry Funk. I remember being a kid in El Paso, Texas, and watching the Von Brauners beating the hell out of Terry Funk and going to cut his ear, and the announcer was pleading, anybody, please, if you can help, please help Terry Funk. And I was crying, eating spaghetti. And telling my mom, please call somebody to help Terry Funk. And I got to talk to Terry about that many years later, about that experience. My father kicked my ass that night. I fucked that up. But
and then my brother Dory took that dog out behind the barn. And that's another story.
But that's a whole other story. But I'll tell you a funny story about, you know, you talk about the two different territories, if you will, and like you said, Houston wasn't necessarily a territory, but when we moved, we had left El Paso, where Grizzly Smith was a big star,
right?
And Grizzly had left the territory because he broke his neck, all right? because Harley Race had come off the top rope onto Grizzly's neck and broke his neck, and Grizzly was gone. His career was over.
Yeah.
Well, when we came to Houston, Grizzly was there, but lo and behold, Grizzly had also suffered a very similar injury at the hands of Johnny Valentine, who came off of the top rope onto Grizzly's neck there.
You would think, as big as Grizzly was, people would quit picking on him.
Yeah, but this sumbitch had a miraculous recovery, and he had one hell of a neck that could be broken that many times by these. And you would think after the first time he would get smart to one of the heels going up to the top rope, coming off on him.
Well, sometimes it took the babyface a little while to figure these things out.
Yeah, this is true.
So you start watching Houston wrestling, and who were your favorites at that point in time? Because that was late 60s.
Late 60s, early 70s, Wahoo McDaniel. Wahoo was king. Wahoo McDaniel, Boris Malenko, and Johnny Valentine. Was the Wahoo Malenko Wars were some of the greatest interviews I've ever seen in my life to this day. And the Wahoo McDaniel, Johnny Valentine matches were some of the greatest I've ever seen in my life.
They built Greensboro on that because Wahoo and Valentine had such chemistry, and neither one of them minded getting hit hard.
No, they didn't.
At all, or hitting somebody else hard.
Yeah.
So they would go from territory to territory, the big money territories, because they were both big stars at that time, but they built the Carolinas. The fans in Greensboro at the Coliseum can still remember when Wahoo hit Johnny Valentine or Johnny Valentine hit Wahoo. You could hear it in the back of the Coliseum. You could hear it in the cheap seats. And it had to be the same thing. When did you first get to go to the Sam Houston Coliseum live?
July 4th, 1969.
You prick.
Fritz.
You got to go before. I didn't get to go to live matches till 74.
We went, and it was Fritz von Erich versus Johnny Valentine.
Oh,
and it was a sellout.
Yeah.
And I remember going, my mom took my brother Tom and I, and it was absolutely insane. I didn't even tell you the section we were at. We were in E3, which was like an arena section, kind of up off the floor a little bit, kind of like in the mezzanine, I guess you would call it.
As you went out from the locker rooms, left side or right side?
Right side.
There you go, because that was the babyface side.
Yeah.
So
So it was great.
You don't want to be on the wrong side.
It was great, and they had this thing that obviously as a kid you don't think about it, but they were called permanent reservations.
Yes.
So that you could have the exact same seats every Friday night, and if you buy your tickets in advance, you save money. You save like 50 cents a ticket.
Which was a big deal at that.
Huge.
We actually in Louisville we had. The best we could get was third row ringside because it was, the same people came in and the tickets were reserved.
Right.
But then somebody moved out of town. And by then I'd met,
Yes.
I'd met Christine Jarrett, so she arranged and somebody moved out of town. We got those front row seats.
You always were on the list. Well, you're
Yeah.
on the list. Whenever it comes up, we'll get you up there. But you were begging for somebody to either go out of town and they didn't need their tickets. And they say, hey, we've got a couple front row.
Yeah.
You guys want them? And Tom and I would take turns, going up and and sitting there. But we liked the seats where we were because we could see.
There was an incredible atmosphere. I remember when we went for Mid-South, some of the wildest crowds and just the most intense atmosphere. When that Sam Houston Coliseum, it was perfect for wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
Because there wasn't really a bad seat in the house. Even though it seated 12,000 people, you could see down on the ring. And the atmosphere was incredible, except if you were a heel and they started throwing the whiskey bottles from the upper deck and, attempting to murder you. But it was an incredible atmosphere.
That was good stuff.
Obviously, as I think one time somebody called me and Bobby Eaton and a few other people the classic hangers-on. You went to the matches pretty much regularly from that point on.
Every Friday night.